Hello, good afternoon, guys. Welcome to the Anfield Review podcast live. I'm OW James. This is, again, we're going to start with some bad news. I don't know what it is this season. I don't know whether somebody ran over a black cat or walked under a ladder or smashed about 15 mirrors or what on earth has gone on at Anfield this season. You know, we contrast this with last season and the joys that we had, obviously, and how we felt going in to the end of the season last year to this season. And it just appears that, like I said, someone has smashed about 15 mirrors, or someone has certainly, I don't know, upset somebody up there, because it just appears to me to be one set of bad news after another set of bad news, especially, with injuries. Last year I think we were quite lucky that we stayed clear of injuries on the whole, whereas this season it appears that, certainly that has not been the case. Worrying times, certainly very, very worrying times at Anfield in terms of those injuries. Now, look, we're going to start off with that news that came out this morning about Hugo Ekitike. Hugo Ekitike obviously went down injured on Tuesday night against Paris Saint-Germain. And like a lot of those injuries, that are serious, he went down untouched. You pretty much know that when someone goes down and they are not touched, that it's serious, that it's bad. Because you get impact injuries, certainly. When players go into each other, you get those. But when you go down and you literally have not been touched, as sort of Giovanni Leone did with his ACL at the start of the season, that injury is not good. Is not good at all. However, it was revealed today by Liverpool that Ekitike has suffered a ruptured Achilles tendon, and he will be out for a substantial amount of time. Obviously, this means the season this year is over for Hugo, but not just that, obviously, rather sadly for the boy. And look, as I said on the video this morning, Hugo has just broken through into the French national team and scored goals for them and has been fantastic for them in his games. And Didier Deschamps, the French national team coach, has been exceptionally impressed with Hugo's performances. And I think he was all set to be a starter in the forthcoming World Cup. However, he now has obviously suffered this injury. He will miss the World Cup. And, we're looking like 2027 before he will return to action in any sort of shape or form. Now, look, the best and worst case scenarios on this injury are pretty bad, no matter which way you look at it. It will require surgery, of course, to repair it. We're looking at anything between 6 and 9 months out. There has even been players who've missed up to 2 years of their careers with this injury. I mean, that's how serious a ruptured Achilles tendon is, that you could actually even miss up to 2 years of your career. There was a centre-half whose name escapes me now, who played for Paris Saint-Germain, who suffered a ruptured Achilles tendon and was out of the game for 2 years before he finally returned. If we're looking at 6 to 9 months, you're looking at what? If it's 6 months at best, you're looking at October this year, which is next season. Or if it's 9 months, you're going to be looking at into January, February next year before Hugo Ekitike can come back and start playing. And look, even when he does come back and start playing, you've got a situation where he will not be match fit, he will not be match sharp. Now, that obviously has two issues. Number one, it can take anything up to 6 weeks to get your match fitness back, your match sharpness back, which of course presents wider issues, for Liverpool Football Club in terms of present with the striker situation, and we'll certainly address that in this podcast. But you've got a situation now where Ekitike will come back, could take up to 6 weeks. Well, then you're looking at what? Say he comes back in January, you're looking sort of February, March time before he's even up to speed. So you're pretty much writing off most of next season as well for Hugo Ekitike, which kind of does push Liverpool towards having to buy or at least go out and try and find a striker come the summer to come in to supplement, obviously, Alexander Isak, whose injury history itself it ain't great, is it? I mean, that's one of the big things about Alexander Isak. The guy's worth, 125 million pounds, but he's always bloody injured. So that's another one. Let's face it, if Isak's injury history continues, it could be a situation where, again, we've got no strikers unless we actually go out and buy a striker in the summer. Jadon Danns, obviously, who there was a lot of hope for. Look, he is hit and miss with that. His injury history is not good either. So the situation, obviously, for Liverpool Football Club is that obviously Ekitike is gone for the rest of this season and for most of next season. Liverpool will need to buy a striker in the summer. That is almost a fact now. Look, the other thing that you've got to consider when it comes to Hugo Ekitike is that this injury is not it is not an injury that is a short-term thing. It is an injury that can affect you for the rest of your career. Having the confidence to have to turn, to run, to rely on that injured Achilles is a massive one. The whole situation. It could be that Ekitike comes back and perhaps does not have the speed or the explosiveness that he has had now pre-injury, because there will be something in the back of Hugo's mind continually now that, oh my God, what if it goes again? What happens if it ruptures again? Do I need to slow this down? Do I need to stop this? What do I need to do? So, there is a real worry there with Hugo Ekitike and his and his recovery time and how he comes back as a footballer. And he may not even come back again as the same type of footballer. So we have got a few worries and concerns there, certainly, going forward. So big worries on the Ekitike front for Liverpool. In the long term and in the short term. Like I said, long term, it is around him and his fitness and his ability to come back as the same player. That Hugo has been fantastic this season. Yes, he's had his ups, he's had his downs, he's had his good games, he's had his bad games. And there's been times this season where perhaps, he hasn't been the player that we've all loved and we've also loved watching. He's had his off moments, and the whole shirt swap incident at Manchester City wasn't great, was it really? But, his overall season has been superb. I mean, if you look at him in the Premier League, 28 matches, 11 goals, 5 assists, 16 goal contributions in 28 is pretty good. EFL Cup, 1 goal, 1 appearance. Champions League, 12 matches, 3 appearances. So overall, he's had 41 appearances, 14 goals, 6 assists. 15 goals, 6 assists. Not a bad return for your first season in English football. And he's still a young player. He's still a young player learning his trade and developing. And he's nowhere near, where he could be. You've just got to hope, as I've said, that injury is not going to affect him. That injury is not going to mean that his career and his progression, which I believe was an upward curve to become one of the best strikers in world football, gets interrupted by this injury, and it is negatively affected him as a player. Particularly for a player who relies on his pace and his explosiveness to go past people and to create those chances and to run in behind. This Achilles injury could be a major damaging factor for Hugo Ekitike. So it is a concern. Obviously, let me know your thoughts in the comments. Hugo Ekitike has spoken sort of indirectly through his social medias to Liverpool fans after this injury. What did he say? Well, apparently he's vowed to draw strength from the club's supporters, and he faces this lengthy spell on the sideline. He described the setback as very unfair, but expressed big gratitude to the Anfield faithful for their backing. It's not great. He posted a poignant message on X alongside a picture of the Anfield turf. He said, "It's hard, maybe even unfair, but I'm grateful for this. For this is happening me here among you. I am not alone. Your strength and your love will be my driving force. See you again soon, Anfield." He obviously is hopeful that he can get back. He's hopeful on the fitness front, and he's coming out and obviously thanking the fans for their backing, and I suppose that is one positive. The fans are very good in terms of that, in how we back how we back our players, how we back those players that come in, show heart, show fight, show battle, and do really well for us. And Hugo Ekitike is certainly one of those people who has done phenomenally well. So look, really sad times. Not great that Hugo's going to miss a large proportion of the rest of this. We'll miss all of this season and a proportion of next season as well. Look, one of the big worries and concerns for me coming out of this now is how we go forward in terms of that striker position this season. I'm not going to talk about next season because we don't know what happens in the summer. It may be that we do go and buy a striker. I don't know. I can't comment. I'm not inside Richard Hughes' mind, Michael Edwards' mind, Arne Slot's mind, whoever's here next season. Hopefully not Slot. But for me, Alexander Isak is the only striker. You've got Cody Gakpo, obviously, who can play through the middle. Cody hasn't been great this season, has he? Cody has been very, very poor this season. So, that's one worth considering. He was okay second half against PSG, of course, but overall he's not been brilliant. And has certainly not performed. Now, Alexander Isak has only just come back from this injury, and as we saw on Tuesday night, he did not look fit, he did not look sharp, he did not look about it, did he? And look, I think anybody who knows anything about injury recovery would have known that Isak coming back was never, ever going to hit the ground running, and was never going to be the Alexander Isak that we paid £125 million for. You know, the guy who gets goals, the guy who is dangerous to opposition defenders, the guy who causes all sorts of trouble for opposition defenders. That's not who he is at this moment in time. He's a player coming back from a severe injury. So you know, the worry is going into the Merseyside Derby on Sunday, who plays up top? How does Arne Slot approach this game at the Hill Dickinson? You know, Everton are going to be absolutely bang up for this game. You know, they are going to see this as an opportunity to obviously dent our Champions League hopes, to put another nail in Liverpool's coffin this season, to really kind of ramp the pressure upon our manager. They're going to be bang up for that one, aren't they? They're going to be absolutely loving that. You know, Slot is under a hell of a lot of pressure going into this game at the weekend, and we'll talk a little bit about it in a moment. But certainly for me, you know, you look at this. And who plays up front? How does Slot play this weekend? You know, is the big question. You know, what is on this man's mind going into this weekend? And I think, you know, once he speaks to the media on Friday, we'll know a little bit more about that in terms of how he plans to approach this game. You know, does he go with Cody Gakpo? Does he go with Cody Gakpo up top and bring Isak on in the second half? Or does he start Isak, play him for 45, maybe 60 minutes, maybe ask Isak to dig a little deeper and go a little further in this game, and then bring someone off the bench? You know, how does he approach it? And obviously with no Hugo Ekitike, his options are severely limited. You know, Isak, obviously, like I said, he's not fit. He's not match sharp. So what happens for that striker position this weekend? So it's a big one for Slot to think about going into the weekend. It is huge, absolutely huge. And it's a worry. It is a major worry, especially, you know, as look, we have necessarily struggled to score this season, struggled to put teams away this season, and this weekend isn't going to be easy. Everton, like I said, will be, you know, absolutely in our faces from minute one. The atmosphere will be pretty electric. You know, their fans will be on top of us from minute one. There is, I think, a real sense on the blue side of the city that they can beat Liverpool this weekend, that they can even, you know, perhaps close the gap on Liverpool and eventually finish above us. That has to be, I think, what they're thinking, you know, rightly or wrongly on this one. And look, you know, I'm no Everton fan, don't like the club, think they're a bit tin pot, but you've got to respect the job that David Moyes has done there. He's done a very good job with his team. And yes, he has got a very good side, a very decent side. So, you know, it is going to be a tricky selection issue for Slot. You know, personally, as much as I haven't rated him this season at all, and I have called him out on several occasions this season, I would start Gakpo up top and bring Isak off the bench. I just don't think it's worth risking or trying to push Isak to go through 50, 55, 60, 65, 70 minutes at this stage of this recovery. You know, especially as obviously we know that going forward, we're not going to have Ekitike again this season. So we realistically need to still be careful with Isak. You know, obviously Chelsea play Man United this weekend, so they will take points off the other, or they could take points off each other, which obviously will help Liverpool in their quest for fifth place. So, and we play Everton, so obviously we'll take points off them, or vice versa. So, you know, it's a situation where I think that Arne Slot does need to be very careful with what he's doing with these players. And very careful with Alexander Isak and how he approaches this game. Like I said, I would probably look at playing Cody Gakpo through the middle and then bringing Isak on maybe after 60, 70 minutes, giving him half an hour, 25 minutes to half an hour at the end of the game. You know, because you're also asking a player who's just come back from injury to go again after playing 45 in midweek against Paris, a very good PSG team, to then go again and play perhaps 45, 50, 60 minutes. Again, you're asking a lot from a player who has missed an awful lot of time this year. So, you know, we've kind of put ourselves in this position through the fact we haven't got, I don't think, enough squad depth. And look, that's on the manager, that's on Richard Hughes. You know, both of them are equally to blame on that one. You know, Slot always said that he likes to work with a smaller squad. Richard Hughes really has not built a squad that you would say is as strong as Man City's, as strong as Arsenal's, even to some extent as strong as Manchester United. So you've got to kind of call them out a little bit on those ones. So it's a strange one, guys. It's a very odd one. And like I said, as much as it pains me to say it, and like I said, I haven't been any fan of his production this year, you maybe look at playing Cody Gakpo through the middle to start off with, where I'll be honest with you, Cody's actually looked a little better playing through the middle than he has playing as a wide man. I think as a wide man, he is too predictable. He cuts in too much. He makes himself very easy to pick up, very easy to mark. Whereas when he plays through the middle, he is a little more tricky to get after. He is direct. He does run at people. And that's kind of what you want from your centre forward. I mean, if you look at his stats from this season, played 30 games in the Premier League this season, 6 goals, 4 assists, so 10 goal contributions in 30, not as good as last season. Champions League, 2 goals in 11 games, 1 assist. EFL Cup, I mean, really good EFL. I mean, obviously, has not played in the EFL Cup this year. So, I think in terms of Cody Gakpo, you maybe do go with him through the middle to start off with, and then bring Isak on in the second half. That may be the only answer for Liverpool this weekend, and it's a difficult one.
No one goes to Hanks for his spreadsheet.
Really, really tricky one for Slot to go for. And look, I'm no fan of Arne Slot's, but I don't envy him this decision in the slightest. Guys, in the comments, please let me know who you would start up top. How would you start up top? Would you start with Isak or Gakpo? Or if you've got a different plan, let me know if you've got a different plan that you think Arne Slot could use this weekend to get the better of our Merseyside rivals in what is going to be a huge Merseyside derby. Right, look, some news that's come out today as well, per Ben Jacobs and Alex Crook of Talk Sport, both of whom have said that Liverpool will still consider signing a centre-half this summer, even though Jeremy Jacquet is set to arrive. Now, Jacquet obviously is presently injured and could well not be properly fit for the next start of next season. Yes, another injury, Courage. Another injury problem. Big injury. Another big injury problem. Yet again, but they could sign a centre half. The Boot Room LFC, welcome. Gakpo hasn't even been average this season. For Isak to work, you need 2 wingers. That and a number 10 can give him service. I agree on that one. That's why I think if you are going to go with Isak and ask him to play 45, 50, 60 minutes, Boot Room, you would go with Salah one side and Gamoa the other side and Wirtz in the 10 against Everton. That's probably the only way that works. And look, wider debate on that one. For me, you've got to start Rio Ngamoa this weekend. Rio Ngamoa has to start on Sunday. It's not even up for debate because otherwise there will be no width to that attack. There will be absolutely no width to that attack. You've got to go with Rio. And Rio should have started on Tuesday night against PSG. He should not have missed. He should not have been on the bench. He should not have been benched. He was the best player against Fulham by now. And I know, before anybody shouts at me, there is a difference in level between Fulham and PSG. I get that. But Ngamoa, in all his appearances this year, has never let Liverpool down. And as every appearance that he's made, he has been probably one of our better players and has done more in the time that he's been on than probably everyone else on the pitch has done. So for me, and you're right, Boot Room, we do need 2 wingers for Isak to work. And that's why I would say if you're going to go with Isak up top, you've got to go with Ngamoa one side, Salah the other, and Wirtz in the 10. And also, that's something we should be trying to work on, this season, is developing that understanding between Wirtz and Isak. I think a big part of what was hoped when both of them were bought was that there would be a link up between the two of them, that they would form partnerships, and that Isak would make the runs and Wirtz would find him with his through balls. That was kind of what was hoped, I think, that Wirtz's creativity would create goals for Isak. So, look, I honestly think you've got to do that. I would play Rio on the left, Sobo on the right. Salah was fed the ball by Wirtz and just wasted it. Fair enough, mate, fair enough. My only worry about playing Sobo out wide is it takes out the midfield, and I think against Everton you're going to need all the legs in the world to keep up with them and to win that midfield battle. It's who you then play, if you play Sobo right, who you then play in midfield around that. I mean, my team, for what it's worth, and I'll put it into the live chat now, and playing Mamalashvili gives me the fear anyway, because I genuinely do not rate Mamalashvili in the slightest at all. My team, for what it's worth, would be this. me just quickly type it up for you. There you go. So my team, for what it's worth, would be Mamardashvili in goal, back four, Gomez, Konate, Van Dijk and Robertson. If Gomez is fit, that's the big question. I think he's more solid against their attack than Frimpong. Konate and Virgil in the middle. Robertson, I would go with Robbo at left back. I think against Everton, it's a battle, it's a fight. You need your leaders, you need your fighters. And Robbo's more of a fighter than Kirkez. Jones, Sobbo and Wirtz as the three. And Salah, Isak and Rio, that should be. Sorry. Salah, Isak and Rio, that should be. Rather than that, I'll retype that. That's really bad, that is. Salah, Isak and Rio as the front three. That would be my team for what it's worth. I just think, like I said, you go with Gomez if he's fit, because it's going to be a battle. He's a lot more solid defensively than Frimpong. Frimpong gives me the fear in defence, certainly. And you go with Robbo at left back because you need that leadership. You need that leader out there to kind of, be part of that battle, be part of that fight. And Robbo, is that. Whereas Kirkis, I think, has a little less of it. There we go. So that's my team for what it's worth. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of that team as it stands. Right, look, getting back to what I was saying, the central defensive situation. Like I said, Jeremy Jacquet has got this shoulder injury. He has had to have surgery. So obviously he is undergoing recovery and surgery from that. So he may well arrive next season not being fully fit. Yes, the injury curse from Liverpool can extend beyond even this island. It can go to wherever. So if you're planning on signing for Liverpool this summer, please be aware, don't give it up. Don't give it up. Slot won't change from the 4-2-3-1, so it's Rio, Wirtz and Sobbo, and the two in the midfield has to be Grav and Jones, or switch Jones for Sobbo. Fair enough. Fair enough, mate. Good shout. What's your back four, Boot Room? What's your back four? Let me know your back four. Like I said, Mamardashvili gives me the fear as well. He really does. But in terms of this defensive situation, as I said, Jacquet won't think. Now, the story that's going round today that I've seen is that, obviously, like I said, there will be another arrival, which to me is giving big hints that maybe, just maybe, this means that Konate won't be signing. That seems to be what this is suggesting. Because if Konate signs a new contract, I can't really see us going out and signing another centre-back, given the fact that we need a six, we need a striker, we need wingers, we need a right-back, we need a new left-back. And with the story going around that we obviously have to sell to buy, it doesn't sound like there's going to be an awful lot of money swishing around. So if you go into next season with Konate on a new deal, Virgil van Dijk, Jacquet, Leone, you've got four centre-halves there. I don't really see them bringing in a fifth one unless they're switching to three at the back, which I don't see them doing, unless Alonso is coming, which is another debate. If it is a situation where Slot is going and Alonso is coming, then yes, I can see us signing another centre-half for definite. Your back four is Robbo, Virgil van Dijk, Konate and Gomez. Yeah, same as mine. Yeah, I'd go with that, mate. I'd go with that, definitely. Give it that. Definitely worth it. The story that is doing the rounds is that Bournemouth defender Marcos Senesi, the Argentinian defender, is very high on Liverpool's watch list at this moment in time. Not massively expensive. Transfer market puts his value at around £20 million. Senesi, who's made 31 appearances for Bournemouth this season, 4 assists, played 97% of their starting 11s, 95% of their minutes in the Premier League, has also made an appearance for them in the FA Cup and made an appearance for them in the EFL Cup as well. Senesi is ex-San Lorenzo and ex-Feyenoord. So, this is one that possibly, if he's coming in and Slot is staying, is a player obviously that Slot has some idea about, having been obviously ex-Feyenoord. In total, in terms of his stats in total, Senesi's made 122 appearances in the Premier League from Bournemouth, so you're getting a Premier League experienced defender, scoring 6 goals with 9 assists. He made 116 appearances for Feyenoord with 9 goals, 7 assists and 72 appearances for San Lorenzo in his native Argentina. He also has 3 national team caps as well. So Senesi appears to be someone that they are looking at. This, I think would perhaps be more of a clue that maybe they are looking at an extra centre back, because of the fact that Senesi is not a high price guy. He's not a Schlotterbeck. He's not Bastoni. He's not someone who you would come in and expect to start maybe from minute one. Could be part of that rotation. Could be a squad player. In terms of him defensively, he demonstrates outstanding vision and body positioning, allowing him to anticipate, play, and intercept passes frequently. He's a proactive defender who wins a high percentage of defensive duels, and he's not afraid to utilise slide tackles. His aerial strength is considered good, but has room for improvement regularly regarding the timing of his jumps. He is comfortable playing in high-pressing tactical setups and is adept at recovering the ball in the opposition half. What else? Senesi frequently drives forward with the ball, creating offensive superiority by advancing into midfield. He has a high volume of dangerous passes and is confident playing long balls, particularly towards the right wing, though his overall pass accuracy can be inconsistent. He provides an offensive threat from set pieces, recording multiple goals and assists during the 25-26 season. In terms of his passing volume, he ranks above average for progressive passing volume and well within the top quartile for dangerous passing volume as well. So sounds to me to be a fairly decent player. Like I said, I don't know a lot about him. I just know what I've read, what I've kind of seen on video. I don't watch a lot of Bournemouth games, only the games they play against us. So Senesi does appear to be a name that has been, linked and is coming back up again as a name that possibly Liverpool are looking at in terms of bringing in a centre-back to supplement what we've got. And as I said, Senesi is someone that clearly slot knows, clearly, could hit the ground running. He's played Premier League football. Wouldn't be a guy who takes a long time to adapt. He's not a guy who's going to come in and kind of go, it's going to take me 6 months to learn to play in the Premier League, because he's played here already. He's played over 100 games in the Premier League. So an interesting link nonetheless. I mean, look, I know Liverpool fans would prefer a bigger name, a Bastoni, a Schlotterbeck, which I think is impossible at this point, given the fact he's just signed that new contract. But I think a lot of this depends around what happens with Konate. If Konate does sign a new contract, as I've said, I really can't see Liverpool splashing a massive amount of money on a centre-back. 20 million, possibly. It's a possible, I suppose. However, Joe Gomez, I think, will leave this summer. I think Gomez will go. I think he's going to want to go somewhere where he potentially could play more first-team football. But for a player who misses so much time with injury, it seems a bit funny that he's looking for a player. He's looking for more football. So a player who can't play 3 games in a week, again, it seems a bit weird that he's looking for more first-time football. So first-team football. So that is a bit of an odd one on that front, isn't it? With Senesi and obviously with Gomez and obviously with the Konate situation. Look, we need to resolve the Konate situation, either one way or the other. The season is getting down now. Very near the end of the season. Liverpool Football Club, Ibrahima Konate need to come to some sort of agreement. Either he is staying and we can work with that and build with that, or he is going and we need to start looking. It needs resolving sooner rather than later. And I think the whole contract situation at the football club isn't great. The way that we seem to take ages over negotiating contracts, the way we seem to drag out contracts and just have so many issues over getting contracts over the line, to me, is a worry. And it's something the club do need to improve on. So like I said, I think the Konate situation just does need to be resolved now and worked out, because it's again another Virgil, Mo, Trent situation where, again, for a whole season we've had will he, won't he, isn't he going to sign, is he going to sign, and it doesn't help. It can't help the player, it can't help the club. It needs to be sorted. It's a shambles. It's a massive shambles from the football club. But in terms of defensive situation for next season, there is a number of questions that do need to be answered. As I've said, Virgil's not getting any younger. What's happening with Konate? Do we go out and get a new centre-back? Because we've got a situation where if Gomez leaves, you've then got Leone and Xhaka as your backups. Well, Xhaka is just coming off an injury. Leone's just coming off a serious injury. Xhaka is going to need time to adapt to the English league. Leone hasn't played hardly any football over here. He's going to need time to adapt and get back to match sharpness and trusting his leg again after the injury. The right back situation is not great either. Frimpong has not proved himself at all this season as a capable right wing back possibly, but not a right back. Going forward, he's fine. Defensively, he's a bit dodgy. Conor Bradley, what do you do with Conor Bradley? Do you keep Conor Bradley? Do you hope that he comes back and these injuries are all part of his body still growing and developing, like Gerrard? Or do you kind of write it off and say, look, really sorry, but with this injury record you've got, with the amount of games you're missing, we just can't, rely on you. So, what do we do there? Conor's a great player, don't get me wrong, and I love Conor Bradley. Also, the left back situation. Kirkez has done really well, has grown as the season's gone on, and looks a good footballer. But Robbo is obviously leaving, wasn't even offered a new contract. I mean, you can obviously debate the whys and wherefores and the pros and cons of that all you want. But what happens at left back? Is it that Kostas Tsimikas comes back and Kostas is the backup? Now, I love Kostas to bits. I really do. But Kostas is not as good as Andy Robertson. Kostas is not as strong as Andy Robertson. And to me, you probably will need a left back as well to replace Andy. So it's a difficult situation that Liverpool face with in terms of this defence. And this defence does have questions over it for the summer. And how do Liverpool strengthen? And I think one of the things that's kind of is really playing on my mind at the moment as a Liverpool fan is all the questions that are swilling around in this club. First of all, who's going to be the manager next season? Yes, it probably looks a little bit like Arne Slot will still be here next season if you believe what David Ornstein said. Just a reminder, if you haven't seen that quote, said, all our information is that FSG, the ownership, the sporting hierarchy at Liverpool, fully intend to stick with Slot. From the conversations I've had, even if there's no Champions League football, that's the intention. Now, I made my feelings clear on that this morning on the video, so if you're not sure what my feelings are on that, which I'm sure you'll know, go and check the video out. But is he still going to be here this next season? I think this, despite what is coming out of the club, despite what David Ornstein has said, despite what people are saying, I think there's still questions over him being here, because if he, as I said on the video this morning, if he is so their man, why is he not under a longer term contract? Why are they letting him enter his last 12 months? It's the big question there. And look, are they going to say any different? At this stage of the season, they know they're in a fight to get Champions League football. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to upset the players. Even though the players are probably upset enough because of Arne Slot. So they're not going to want to cause any issues around that. So they're going to have a situation where they're going to basically back their manager and publicly back their manager to say to the players, look, you've got to get behind him as well. To the fans, you've got to get behind him. He's not going anywhere. Let's try and keep this together to the end of the season, because a United dressing room and a United club is far more likely to achieve Champions League football, to achieve a higher league position than one where there is constant questions over the manager and radio silence from the ownership. So, I get why that's happening. I understand why that's happening and that Slot is being backed. I still don't fully expect him to be here next season, and I certainly hope that the club shows some common sense and actually does sack him this summer, or that he shows some common sense and resigns. That for me is the other one. I don't rate him. I really don't rate him, and I think a lot of people out there are losing their love for the club and their love for games because of him. He's killing it, absolutely killing it. Not in a good way at all. Guys, I'd love to know your thoughts. Let me know. Should Slot be sacked in the summer, or do you think that he has been a victim of circumstance and he deserves a little bit longer at the job and a chance to turn it around next season? I think personally the people who are drawing kind of similarities and parallels between him and Jurgen Klopp, it's unfair on Jurgen. Jurgen is a much better manager, coach than Slot on a number of levels. Jurgen's man management absolutely dwarfs what Slot does. His tactical genius is massively higher than Slot's. His team selections, his team shapes, his way of playing is massively ahead of Slot's. Slot is just so bad compared to Jurgen. So, those who compare, you can't compare. You really can't compare. It's like comparing night with day. You just can't do it. But for me, Slot has had an exceptionally poor season. Slot has really let this club down massively, hugely. And look, I would get the transition argument if there was evidence that it was a transition. If I could see progress, if I could see an upward trend in the way we're playing. But I'll be honest with you, I have not seen this season one single upward trend, one single positive move forward. Yes, there's been the odd game, but it has to be consistent over a period of time. You know, if you can see a team making progress, a team with a shape, with an identity, with a way of playing that is gradually getting better and is gradually improving and is gradually making steps forward, then fine, fair enough. Keep the manager, let him prove himself. But I can't see anything from this team that tells me we're making progress, that we're moving forward, that we're stepping it up. To me, it just isn't there. And that's massive, huge. And it's not good enough for Liverpool Football Club. You know, it is not good enough for this football club. It really isn't. You know, this club should be up there contending for every single trophy, instead of now facing a situation where on the 16th of April we're out of every cup competition and we can't win the league either, and we are literally scratting to try and get into the Champions League. You know, it's a pretty humiliating experience, especially after spending so much money in the summer. It has been embarrassing, certainly for the football club, and it's sad. It's very sad. And look, I don't take any joy in saying that. I would have loved this to work out for Arne Slot, that he comes, you know, and I'm not saying he had to win the league this season. You know, retaining a league title is an exceptionally hard thing to do. I get that. I understand that. But at least have made a better fist of it. At least be in a position where we're not scratching and fighting and clawing to get into the Champions League. You know, we should be up there with Man City and Arsenal in terms of our points total, in terms of contending. And I'm not saying, like I said, we should be winning the league. You know, there has been a player changeover, which obviously is going to affect the side, but at least be making a better fist of this than we are currently doing, because we are making an absolute god's awful mess of this season. And this season has been one big mess. And a lot of that is, yes, the players do carry some of the blame, but the manager does carry some of the blame as well. Right, that is it for this afternoon, guys. Thank you to those who joined. Thank you for those who watched. Please obviously smash a like on the video. Please remember to subscribe, comment, share, and like on the video. Thank you to Bootroom LFC for your comments this afternoon. It's been a pleasure speaking to you, as always, here on the Anfield Review podcast. Please, of course, if you subscribe, ring that bell, then you'll never miss out on the great free content. Guys, I'll speak to you very, very soon. Keep watching out for videos.